Hello, and welcome to this Christian Walk podcast, the show where no topic is too taboo to empower you on your walk with God. I'm your host, Marley B., and it is my privilege to welcome you back to the conversation. And today we are going to be tackling a subject that everybody should explore at least one point in their life. Not so much the conversations that we have with others, but the conversation we have with ourselves. So I brought my friend, Minister Gale Johnson, to discuss self-talk and how important a negative self-talk or a positive self-talk, whichever one you've picked, is going to be instrumental in where you go. So let's get into that conversation right now.
Walk with me, talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk?
So welcome, Minister Gale Johnson, to TCW.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to see you today.
Gail, you know what? I have to say this right here is a dream come true for me.
Bless you.
Because I've been wanting to have you on here for the longest time, right? Let me be real about why. So when I was volunteering in the church office, right, that was like at the very beginning of me really establishing a relationship with God, right? And you was one of the first Christians. I was like, she cool, she a cool Christian. You know, some Christians come off as beyond reproach. You know what I'm saying? But you came off as cool. We talked about dating. We talked about real life stuff in real language. You would slide a good scripture in there or a good old parable. Okay. But a real life, like a true time parable in there. Right. But it would be something that I understood. It'd be something that I appreciate. And it was something that would ultimately help me. And it just kind of made you a nice little cushy place in my heart. Right. Okay. You know, I'm one of your biggest fans. You like my favorite. You're one of my favorite ministers to listen to preach. And you're definitely one of my top 3 favorite prayers of all times, right?
Bless you.
So officially welcome my friend, Minister Gale Johnson, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Now I know this is a stretch for you, right? Because as boisterous as you can be and powerful as you can be on that pulpit or in them prayer lines, I know you naturally are an introverted person, right?
I am.
Yeah. So while you're an introvert, I know stuff like this is not comfortable for you, but I thank you for stretching yourself for the movement, right? Absolutely. This is for the movement. This is for the kingdom.
Thank you for pulling me out.
My pleasure. So we're talking about a thing that I think everybody has to check about themselves at one point or another, which is our internal dialogue, right? And as the more I got to know you and talk to you about, you know, some of your life experiences, I felt like internal dialogue was a huge thing for you in your evolution in your walk with God.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So you started off, let's start off like, you know, so we can get some background on who you are, how you became Minister Gale Johnson. Now you Minister Gale Johnson, but that was a road to get to, right?
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, so you start off. So where originally are you from, Gale?
I'm originally from here. I was actually born in a little town right next door called Pineville, North Carolina, but I've grown up here all my life. So this is where I'm from.
And then you are number 7 of 12 kids.
Yes.
And then you came from a 2-parent household?
No, a one parent household. My mom was a single mom.
Okay. So you number 7. Now you hear the things about the middle child, like but you think like 3 kids. How is it being number 7? You like, how is being number 7 in a 12 kids? How was that?
Number 7 was tight, especially since there are 5 boys younger than I am. I have one brother over me and 2 sisters. 3 of my siblings died young. 2 of them actually were stillborn.
Oh, wow.
So there is 4 years between me and the next brother. Then there's 14 years between me and the next sister. And there was 16 years between me and my oldest sister. By the time I'm up good and beginning to go to school, the sisters have already left the house. So it leaves me with those 6 boys. So I had that one brother over me and those 5 brothers under me.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it was wild. It was wild. Being the only girl in the midst of all of them, it was wild.
So you felt like a mother more than did you feel like a mama or did you feel like a big sister?
Definitely more of a mother. Because with my mom being a single mom and her working sometimes 2 jobs, I was there with the boys. So I was the one doing the cooking and making sure we got the cleaning done and those types of things. So definitely more like a mom.
So you've been a mom since you was how when you start feeling like you was a mom?
At 8. At 8. At 8.
Wow.
Because I can remember at 8 beginning to help mama cook, understanding really, okay, mama's gone and these are certain things we have to do. And then understanding how to try to keep those boys in line. And then mama was always insistent that we be together and love on each other. So of course, you know, they didn't do what I told them to do while she was gone. When she left again, we had to fight it out. We had to get the understanding of who's in charge.
Oh yeah. Oh, you had to maintain your dominance up in there. You had to earn their respect. I know that was hard.
That's right. I had to make them remember.
Oh wow. It did. So from 8 until, because when did you leave home?
I left home when I was 21.
And then you left home to go where?
I left home by then. I had my first daughter. I had a child at 19. So by then I had a child. I was going to school and I was working. So I got my own place and I left home.
Oh, okay. And then I know you got married when you were 22. I was about to say, I knew it was like early 20s.
Yes.
So you had a little bit of a long time there.
Yes.
And then but you at that time, you working, single mom, you're a teen mom, right? Yes. At that point. Yes. And so you, I mean, late teens, but still a teen mom. Right. And so working. And so I'm sure that was pretty hectic. And then you meet this guy.
Right. He's cute, you know, he's looking the part. But we dated for about a year and then we got married.
And then you went on to have a marriage that lasted what, 14 years?
14 years.
And now you've been divorced over like 23 years.
23 years. Yes.
So I know in that time frame, within that 14 years, you said the first 4 years were good years. The
first of the marriage? Yes. It was. I mean, it really was. First 2 years was like picture book. It was the idea. Then a couple of years after that was good too. But then it was like after that, things began to change. Our ignorance of being a spouse began to show, and that's basically what it was. Nobody taught me how to be a wife. Nobody taught him how to be a husband. So we were really just going on what we knew. But what we knew wasn't enough to hold the marriage together.
So explain how it was to try to find that, because I think a lot of people go in with that you're not thinking about what it takes to really be that. Did you feel like you got like, you know, just kind of, or you wanted to be a wife, but you didn't really know what that mean?
I definitely wanted to be a wife, and I definitely didn't know the depth of what that took. Because here again, my mom was a single. All I ever remember of my mom was being a single parent. Now, my mom and my dad were married, but by the time I was up to some size, because I've seen my daddy before, but we never had a relationship.
So you've never had a relationship with your dad, even to now?
I didn't. No, and my father died a day before I got married.
Really?
He died of complications from double pneumonia. Yes.
Wow. So how did that make you feel to that he passed, but you didn't know him?
It felt odd. It really and truly did. Because by that time I am getting ready to get married. You know, I'm thinking my life is going to be this grand adult life. And that was one of my dreams, was to eventually find him, talk to him, get to know him, these types of things. But he, like I said, he died the day before I got married.
Wow. So did missing your dad, what did that do for you? Like, because, you know, I know you were working and being that mom, the mom inside, you know, that 8-year-old mom, but a part of you was just like, you know, how does it feel? I can't really say that I know what it feels like to not have my father in my life, but I know that it impacts people differently. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm just wondering, how did that make you feel?
I didn't really have a particular feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, part of the atmosphere that I grew up in, there were men always around, but none of them took me under their wings, so to speak, or cared for me like a father would care for a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, part of my life, I grew up in a liquor house. So yeah, I saw the faces in and out. I got used to their faces. They got used to my face. My
Mm-hmm.
mom was very particular, though. She was very protective of me. And then I had the brothers. And so I didn't know, I think because I never had a father, I didn't know what I was missing
Mm.
until I got older and until I had children. And so having my children, I wanted my children, I didn't want my children to come from a broken home like I felt like I had come from.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me staying in that dysfunctional marriage as long as I did was for the sake of keeping the family together, so to speak. And so I didn't know what I was missing until well into my 30s.
Mm.
And so what a father, having a father in your life would feel like or would look like. Mhm.
Mm. Now, what you said, you didn't have really like a particular feeling about it, but when you think about when you married your, because you got married pretty young,
Yes.
do you think that a part of you was trying to fill a void of your dad not being there?
And part of me was trying to escape. That's what I
Oh.
was. I was
Yeah,
trying to escape.
I'm sure it was many adventures living in a liquor house. How was that? How was that experience?
It was interesting. It was like, some nights just watching the antics of the people and just kind of looking to see, because in the neighborhood I grew up in, it was considered the country.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody looked out for everybody. So it wasn't a matter of not having.
Mm-hmm.
Because like on Friday nights, my mom had like two good friends. And a couple of Friday nights a month, they would have fish fries. Well, all the children of the women who had the fish fries, all the children hung together for that weekend. But everybody knew everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody took care of everybody and looked out for everybody. That's one of the things I miss in today's time. During that time, you really didn't do anything in the neighborhood and everybody not know.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a need, people in the neighborhood came to fill the need because everybody knew everybody. It was like everybody was like one big family. And usually the fish fries were to raise money for somebody or for a need somebody had. So it was like,
we'll sell a plate to get something done, won't we?
girl, what?
We will sell a plate. You go.
We will sell a plate, okay? But the unfortunate thing about that, though, for me was because my mom knew what, those activities were illegal.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't really trust anybody. And that's kind of how she raised us. So we didn't go into anybody's house and anybody else, come to our house to spend the night and for different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because you always kind of had to be on the lookout, and if she didn't know your face, if you weren't known in the neighborhood, you couldn't come to the house.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't come to the fish fry if your face was not known, because they never knew who was who or who was somebody who would go back and snitch. It was a real tight-knit family, so to speak. But everybody knew everybody. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll build some community, and no matter what's going on, community is important, especially when you're doing something where hey, this might not be legally acceptable,
right?
But this is we doing what we have to do
for the benefit, right? For the benefit of the need. This is what we gonna do.
Yeah. It's a lot of kids up in here, so this is what we got to do.
Yeah.
This is what we gotta do. I get that. So tell me a little bit about, married life for you and how it went from book picture perfect to volatile.
Marriage was good. It was good. God has given me a caring heart. He's given me a servant's heart. So caring for somebody else and doing for somebody else has always brought joy to my life. Mm-hmm. And so married life was good. Had the husband, had the children, he went to work, I went to work, we came home, we did the family thing. Married life was good. And then after a while, my husband drank. And first it was just a casual beer every now and then. Then it went from beer to the alcohol. He had a friend that used to like to go clubbing. And so now he's clubbing and he's coming home. He's had a little too much to drink. And he and Gale aren't agreeing on that. And so it just went from let's do things together and figure this out together to, you're the wife, I'm the husband. I've never been a drinker or a smoker. Growing up in that atmosphere, my thing used to always be, God, if you get me out of this, I'm not going to drink, smoke, or run them streets. And so, because it was not something that was a part of me, and then it was something that I didn't really want to have anything to do with, it became a problem in the marriage. The drinking became a problem in the marriage. I've never been a clubber, even as a teenager and as a young person. I didn't go clubbing. It wasn't an option for me. So I was okay with him going out. But for me, when you start coming in at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, you don't cross the line. Now that's disrespectful.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Right. And so my whole mindset was, so wherever you were and whatever fun you were having that took you that long, that might need to be where you want to stay.
Right.
And I've always been, I don't have a problem telling you what you're doing that's bothering me or that's hurting me. But once I make that known to you and you don't make any changes, or we can't come to an agreement as to how to handle it, mentally and emotionally, I start to cut you off. Once the cutoff begins, if there are no changes, the cutoff just goes. So after a while, I was no longer emotionally or mentally invested. I was just kind of there in body, so to speak.
Because when you cut this off, at what point, what year of the marriage was this?
By then, let's see, because Jaleesa was born in 88. This is 87. This is 4 years later. This is 4 years. We had been married for 4 years the first time infidelity happened. We had been married for 4 years. And things just kind of went downhill from there, because it was like one hurt after another hurt after another hurt after another hurt. To the point to where I began to believe, and I even said this to him, I'm married. You presented yourself as a single man. And with the second one, once she realized he was married, she kind of moved on. Now, this third one, she had to come to the house to be sure that he was married, because he wouldn't lie to her. It was wild. And so now that she knows that he is married, by this point, she said they've been seeing each other for 4 months. And, she feels like she's emotionally vested and that she just can't give him up. So,
this is what she decides to tell you as his wife.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what, that's why she came to the house, because he wouldn't lie to her. She needed to see for herself.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so, like I said, she's 4 months in and she just can't let go. And so I decide to leave. I leave. And I moved in with my sister for a little while. And so I get up one couple of mornings, he sleep on the porch because he wants his family back. He's sad for what he did and yada, yada, yada. So we played that game for a couple of weeks, and then I did go back. And the day I went back, he was going to take the girls to the movies. And so while I'm there, the phone rings and I answer the phone. And it's this female on the other end of the phone telling me what kind of wife I'm not. Because he had been in a motorcycle accident, but he told me he wasn't seeing her anymore. He had been in a motorcycle accident and had hurt his ankle. Now, he hurt his ankle during the time he told me he was not seeing her. So as she began to tell me what kind of wife I'm not and how I need da 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 da, because she had to bandage up his ankle and she had to do this and she had to do that. And I look at him, because you told me you hadn't seen her. And she wouldn't know this because this just happened.
Right.
Girl, it was cordless phone. I took that phone and slung it across the room. And it was on from there. It was on from there. And so, but it was at that time that I began to understand, yeah, no, marriage is not supposed to be like this. Marriage is not supposed to hurt like this. And honestly, it was at that time that I began to, in my mind and in my heart, make the decision that I no longer wanted to be a part of this marriage. I told my husband from time to time how I was feeling about different things. At one point in time, because I was working in corporate America, like you, moving up that ladder. And he said to me, you spend too much time at work. If you'll take a job working fewer hours, we would have more time to work on our marriage. And so, as much as I didn't want to, for the sake of the family and for the sake of my marriage, I did. I switched jobs. Well, the job I switched to, one of my managers from the place I was currently working had gone and started another bank. had started another bank and needed some workers. And I called him. He's like, yeah, come on, you got a job. And so about a month after I get there, though, the accounts aren't coming in as they would have preferred. So they kind of cut our hours. Now, one of the problems we was having in the marriage, of course, one of the biggest problems for marriages was financial.
Mhm.
So at that point in time, instead of having the one joint account, I just split the bills. You pay your bills, I pay mine. So by this time, though, like I said, I left that job to go to this job. And then when they cut our hours, I said to him, hey, Dave cut our hours. He pretty much was like, yeah, okay. My bills were still my bills.
Mhm.
So I have this part-time job because it's now I cut the hours, but I also went and had to go get another job because I have children to take care of. And so day to day, I'm really realizing now, this is not, I may not have gone to wife school, but I'm pretty sure this ain't how it's supposed to be. And so eventually, yeah, I made the decision to leave the marriage. I did. My husband and I fought. I mean, literally fist fought. But
Mhm.
what made me make my final decision was the night the female showed up at the house. We got into a fight. He got mad and he left. But when he came back with his gun.
Oh.
Right. So, but it's cool because I had mine at that time too.
Oh,
So
okay.
he outside the door with his 357. I'm right inside the door with my 45. And I'm saying, God, somebody's gonna end up getting hurt, and I don't want it to be me.
Right.
He's standing outside the door saying, put your gun down, Gale. And I'm saying, no, put your gun down. So we get ready. And so I decided, no, I can't. I can't do this.
And you took it as long as you did because what? You didn't want to fail at marriage?
I didn't want to fail at marriage. I just
Mhm.
did not want to fail at marriage. And we have all girls.
Mhm.
And not having a father, and this is when it starts to hit me now about the father, not having a father. I didn't want my girls not to have their father. Unfortunately, once I left the marriage, even their relationship became dysfunctional for a while. But I also understood that it's not going to make any sense if one of us or both of us is dead and they have neither parent, or one is dead and the other one's locked up.
Mhm.
So it's at that point, though, that I began to understand a value and a worth for myself.
Right. And then but you first had to acknowledge the lack thereof. What was that process? What was
It,
that process like?
it was hard. It was hard. Um, it was hard because at that time I felt like I had nobody to talk to. There was nobody that I could talk to and explain what was going on. When I did leave my husband, one of the older ladies at the church we was attending at the time, she said, oh, what did you do? I said, excuse me. She said, but he's such a sweet guy, because at church he was that guy, helping all the older ladies. He was that quiet guy. He was that nice guy. He was. And of
Mhm.
course, Gale was the mean one, because Gale was the one who took the children out of church and popped them. And Gale was that one.
Yeah.
So it had to be my fault.
Mhm.
And so I'm saying to her, I am literally fighting for my life, sometimes on a daily basis. I
Mm.
get home from work sometimes and I sit in the car and contemplate whether or not I want to go in the house or not, because I don't know what's going to happen when I get in there. I'm in the house sometimes trying to figure out how to get out the house, even just to simply go to the store, because I don't know when I'm going to have to fight my way out.
Mhm.
And so all of that became, and I can remember, because I was ignorant of the word of God, I didn't know what God said about marriage, because I
Mhm.
wasn't reading the Bible like that. I didn't have an intimate relationship with God. And the older ladies of the church, they would always say things like, you can't leave your husband, God's going to get you, God hates divorce, yada, yada, yada. And I internalized that. I believed that until one morning I got up and I looked up at the ceiling and I said, God, you're going to have to do what you're going to do, because I'm out of here.
Mhm. And that's just a great example about, it's so many of us that are just in the church, and like you always say, the ritual of it, just
That's it.
there faithfully, but
That's,
just do not have a relationship.
that's
I
it.
know I was like that. I grew up in church. I was one of those people, I gotta go to church. It's Sunday. I gotta go to church. It's Sunday. But had not even the slightest real relationship with God. And
Right.
that's I love that you was able to admit that
Yes.
and acknowledge and really give an example on how it looks. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? Like, you're there and you have no idea, and you don't even have even the discipline at that time to say, well, let me go find out what it says.
Right. Right.
You know,
And
and that's it.
It wasn't until I left my husband that I actually went from a ritual to a relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't until after then that my prayer life became real,
Mm-hmm.
and that the need to read the Bible became a necessity for me, because I
Mm-hmm.
needed to know that I was loved. I needed to know that I mattered. I needed to know that I really was the apple of his eye. I needed to be able to believe that. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, reading has always been a thing for me. And so to read it and to be like, oh, okay, okay. And then what helped me too was there's this book called Bad Girls of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Love that book,
Bad
because
girl.
you gotta get it. You gotta get the book,
I'm writing it down. Bad girls of the month.
because what it does is she tells stories. She has these characters. She tells the story, and then at the end of the story, she gives you the character from the Bible.
Okay.
Thinking, I read that. I don't remember that being in there. And so the one that got me was Athaliah's daughter. Athaliah, Jezebel's daughter.
Okay.
I don't think as many times as I've read that, I don't remember Jezebel having a daughter. I just remember her ruling her husband, controlling her husband.
Right.
And so I go back and I read it, and sure enough, Athaliah was just like her mom, and she even died like her mom did. But the thing about that book, Bad Girls of the Bible, you see stories of women who lived ordinary lives, so to speak, but the different things that happened to them. And you understand that the Bible is real, because you start to see your life in some places in it. And that's when you begin to understand, oh, it's real.
Yes.
And for me, it was, if these stories are real, and if I'm reading some pieces of my life in this, then God has got to be real. And if he's real, then I can believe what it says in his word.
Mm-hmm.
I can believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I can believe that God took his time and put me together piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things my ex said to me right when I left him, he says, nobody's ever going to want you, because you have, number one, because I had 4 girls, I had 4 kids. Ain't no man gonna want a woman with 4 kids. So a lot of the derogatory things that he said when I left him, they spun in my head for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I read the Bible, the more strength mentally and emotionally I was able to get. And of course, it was strengthening me spiritually. It was building me up. It was teaching me that I am valuable, whether I'm single or whether I'm married. To get to know me first as the person, to get to know my likes, my dislikes, and to be able to express that to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And not just take whatever somebody hands me for the sake of peace. No, yeah, no, I don't like that. No, thank you.
Right.
And be okay with no thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And be okay with not getting it.
So you can say that when you got married, it's safe to say you didn't really even know yourself.
I didn't.
You didn't know yourself. So how can we teach or even give an expectation to somebody when we don't even know ourselves?
And that's it. And that's it. You know, how do I offer you something that I don't have?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation with my brother this morning. We was talking about a guy we used to work with who's on drugs, and now he's strung out on methadone. And I said to him, I don't know what to say, because that's never been an issue in my life.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we got to be careful about doing is, making judgment statements about something that we know nothing about. I don't know what it feels like to be strung out on drugs. I don't know what it feels like to have to take methadone.
Mm-hmm.
But I have enough heart to be able to pray for him and to pity him, because now you went from one thing, because he was strung out on heroin, you went from one addiction to another.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to my brother, wow, I'll be praying for him. I didn't know what else to say. And once I realized that you're right, I didn't know me. I didn't know what I had to offer. I didn't know what it took to satisfy me, because up until that point, I was always doing what somebody else wanted me to do.
Because I think one thing about when we don't know how to, we don't know or take the time to learn ourselves, is because we are really misguided where we should be finding our identity. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to find it in God, but we find it from people that say, oh girl, you're gonna be just like your mama, or oh, you're gonna be just like she reading all the time, you must gonna be an editor, or, you know, and then it's just like, okay, but we never take the time to say, well, God, who do you say I am?
Right. Right. Right.
Do you feel like, okay, so what was that process like when you were finding who you are in God? What did that look like? How did you go about it? I mean, I understand you read the books and things like that to help get you out of that. Pretty much, let's call it what it was. It had to be some sort of depression,
Yes.
because you're
Yes.
going through thinking that you failed at what you said that you made a vow before God to do.
Right. Right. Exactly. I failed.
Yeah.
I failed. And then not only did I fail, for a while I dealt mentally and emotionally with, I'll never forget, one night we got into a bad argument and he was sitting at the table eating, and he took the plate and slung it, and it hit the back door, but it fell like right beside my youngest one, and she was a baby at the time.
Mm.
And as I'm crying and cleaning this stuff up, it's like I heard a voice say, so you want your girls, this is what you want your girls to think they got to go through to have a man? Yeah. Messed me up for a while, mentally and emotionally. That took me even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm teaching my girls that you have to be beat on, cussed at, cheated on. You know, you have to work. These are the things you have to do to be married or to have that life, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So it went from one depressing thought to another for a while. Mm-hmm. Once I began to understand that I am valuable, that I am somebody, that I do have gifts, I do have talents, then my next thing was just like you. Okay, God, what you want me to do? What is it you will have me to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, when you ask that, because I know for me, I felt like, okay, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, right? I know as I had grew and got into a relationship with God and understood what he could do when you gave your life to him, right? And then I had to really acknowledge the fact that I really sucked at running my life. Like, I'm really bad at it. Like, I'm not doing this well. Right. And then it's like, when I find out that I'm living in probably kind of maybe on the lines of the worst case scenario, and God has the best case scenario. So then I got to ask him. And then when he asks you, it's so scary. Then you're just like, well, how am I supposed to do that? So then, right. Because you didn't picture yourself being a minister. How did it look when you found out that's what he wanted you to do?
I got divorced in 97. So it was actually in 2001. Let me back up a little bit. I got divorced in 97. So for about a year after I had left my husband, he was trying to get me back. So one night he came to my job. During this time I was working third shift. He came to my job and we got into this argument about me not coming back to him. And then he looked at me and he said, I can't take you back anyway, because I'm not going to be married to a preacher. I was like, excuse me? And during this time, I'm just barely getting back into the church good.
Right.
What are you talking about? I'm not a preacher. And so in 2001 was when I went on a 3-day fast, because by then I was like, God, I'm like you. I'm just all over the place. I'm just what I'm doing. Went on a 3-day fast, had nothing but water. That's how determined I was. And I know it was a God ordained fast, because I didn't even want to taste anything. I didn't even taste the food that I cooked for my children. That's how determined I was to hear from God. And so I'm at work one day and I'm reading my Bible, and it's during my lunchtime, and I'm saying, God, what? And I will never forget. I'm sitting there and he said, come ye out from among them and be ye separated. What that mean?
I'm like, oh, you gonna just speak Jerusalem right to me. Okay, got it.
Right. So I was like, so what that mean, God? So I'm praying and I'm fasting. That's when God, I want you to lead my people. And I'm still saying, what that mean, God? What that mean, God?
Right.
And so I go and I have a conversation with my pastor, and I say, I've been praying and fasting and asking God what it is he has for me to do. And he says, oh, I've been waiting for this day. And I'm like, okay, he spoke to you too. So,
you had heard something?
What did he tell you? what did he tell you? And he said, Gale, there are times God will call you to walk behind the people. There are times he'll call you to walk with the people. Then God will call you to walk ahead of the people. God is calling you to walk ahead of his people. I'm like, what that mean? I'm still talking about what that mean.
Right.
And girl, when he said God has called you to lead his people, God's calling you to be a preacher. God's calling you. I broke down and I cried. I cried and I cried and I cried. Because I had a little crying moment when he said, "Come ye out from among them." Because he let me know right then, the very people that you think are for you are going to be the first ones to go against you. So I cried at the thought of that. But then when the preacher said that to me, I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried because I was ready to do a Jonah. I'm getting ready to buy me a ticket to Tarsus. I ain't doing that.
Yeah, that just sounds tedious.
And then not only that, I don't do people like that. Like
right, you're an introvert. Right.
You know, I'm the one working in the kitchen, washing the dishes in the back while y'all feeding the people and talking to the people.
Right.
You know, I'm the one that's cleaning the church up after everybody leave because and one of the things I understood later in my life, because like I say, I grew up sheltered. I didn't really have a friend until I was well out of high school. So when you spend...
Not a friend?
I had them at school when I went to school, but I didn't go to their house. They didn't come to mine. I didn't call them. They didn't call me. I only saw them at school. So when you spend the first pretty much 20 years, when you spend 20 years doing anything, it becomes an ingrained part of you, so to speak. So for the first 20 years of my life, it was just, I didn't have a friend. I didn't talk to people. I didn't do that. So now here I am having gone through this marriage. I have these children. And now God is saying, lead his people. Come on now. How am I supposed to do that?
Right.
So needless to say, I did my initial sermon in 2002. This is 5 years after my ex has said to me, you're going to be a preacher.
And so when you did that first one, did it feel like, okay? Because, you know, I like, you know, that feeling of doing that, of I'm doing what God want me to do. Did you get that right away? Or did you feel like a fish out of water?
I still felt like a fish out of water. I still
That's real right there. That's real.
I did. And then having to do my initial sermon, because when I got the first time, it was, you know, I was under the Baptist Association, and you have to do an initial sermon where the people come and they got to listen to you preach, and they basically got to be like, And so I was like, really, God?
Oh, so you went to preach in American Idol?
What?
I didn't
much. Pretty much. And so I will never forget one of the older ladies saying to me after that night, because it was on a Sunday afternoon, and she said to me, "You've been running around here bootlegging long enough." I was like, "Excuse me." And she did. She said to me, she said, "Gale, you've always been a leader." She said, "You've always been that one that wasn't a part of everything else that was going on." She said, "And you have. I believe that God has called you to this as well." So I miss the days of the mothers of the church, because it was the mothers that grabbed hold of me when I started going to that church in 97. I started going to that church after I had left my husband. And it was the mothers who grabbed hold of me and who helped me to understand what living a life before God that honors him, that glorifies him, but that's also worthy of being followed by anybody else. It was the mothers of the church.
And then when did you start to feel that self-talk changing for you? Like, how did you know? Because like at first you're feeling like a failure. Right.
Yes.
Now, when did it change to where you know that you didn't fail? Or how did that look for you when you start changing your talk about your experiences at that point?
That changed for me about 2 years after my initial sermon. So that would have been like 2004, 2005. It changed for me then because things began to happen in my life that caused my prayer life to intensify, caused me to have to read the word more. I was seeking God more. So as I'm seeking God, and as I'm reading the word, and as I'm understanding the word, I'm now believing what I'm reading. Because, you know, in Hebrews, it tells us that those of us who call upon God, you must first believe that he is who he says he is. And so that's when it intensified for me. That's when it started changing for me. And it was myself and a group of singles at that time that went to my previous church who would get together, and they began to, okay, Gale, they would ask me questions, and I knew I had to be responsible enough to give them an answer, first of all, that glorified God, an answer that lined up with his word, but also an answer that they could understand. And it was at that time too that I began to understand that everything that had happened in my life was not for me to try to hide in the bottom of my shoe. I was going to have to start using some of those life experiences to help people understand that you don't just see somebody standing and can read the Bible, or they can, you see somebody that's gone through. Here again, like some of the Bible characters, it is real.
Yeah.
It is real.
And what I've heard so much, because as I've been having these conversations with people on different levels of faith, I've even talked to people with no faith. But, you know, a lot of the times they have trouble trusting leadership in the church because they don't get to know them. You go to a church and it's just like this guy at a pulpit, and and like what he's saying might touch you, and it may be very evident that God is working through him, but it's still really no real rapport between you all, you know. And so and that's why I think, and I commend you so much on having this intimate portrait today, so where people can really get to know who you are and how you came to get to the faith level that you are at. And while your stories are, or while your words are so exemplary, because you've lived it and you've earned that place to be able to lead, you know. And so it's so important for people to be transparent.
Yes.
And so when you think about that, when you said what you just said, it made me think about something else you told me about, how God wastes nothing.
Nothing.
And it makes you okay.
Yes.
About what you've been through.
Yes.
And I think that's the best thing, the best antidote to changing your self-talk, is to realize everything you've been through wasn't to just mark you up and make you dirty and in the street.
Right.
It was to prepare you.
Yes.
For something awesome that God can still do with you.
Yes.
Because and let's be real, the real reluctance about you going into ministry, was it because you thought you weren't worthy to do it?
I did. I felt like a failure. I felt like, because of what I had been through, if the people found out, they weren't going to want to hear anything I had to say.
Ooh,
they were not going to want to hear
anything.
That's it right there. They don't want to hear. In 2002, God also gave me a girls ministry. And so I get the girls ministry up, it's running, it's doing well. And my two youngest daughters decided all of a sudden they want to get wild. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, God, nobody's going to let me work with their daughter when I can't do nothing with my own daughters. That's not. And so I stopped. And God is so gracious and he's so loving. Now that was in 2002. In 2009, there was a situation where I felt like it was time to get the girls ministry back up and running. And I went to a different church because I needed to be sure that I was hearing God correctly. And I had found the papers for the first one, the receipts where I had bought things for the sleepover, everything. And so I got a little excited. And so the preacher, after he preached that day, he was speaking, he was prophesying. And he said, there's somebody in here. Recently, you found some paperwork for something you started a while ago and you put down. So I'm like, okay. Because I'm looking for I'm looking for the confirmation.
Right.
He said, you found papers all the way down to some receipts. So now I'm really looking. He said, God said to tell you that his hands are still on it. Now is the time to get it up and running, and it will impact the city. I lost it. That was my confirmation.
Right.
I didn't know him. He didn't know me. He hadn't been. I had just moved into the house and was unpacking some boxes. So it excited me because I thought, like I said, I laid it down because my girls had gotten a little bit out there. But God said no. And that's the thing about it. When God tells you to do something, you can't allow what you think is not, that disqualifies you. You can't decide what disqualifies you.
And then we have to make the decision, because let's be real, that the church folk fear is real.
It's real.
It's real. And because it's so much stuff, we don't want the church folk mad at us. We don't want them talking about us. We don't want to get blacklisted, because they will get in there and will talk about you and condemn you. And we don't want on that list.
We don't.
And then so we gotta, and it's a real G move.
Yes.
To say, I'm gonna do what God said, and no matter what nobody got to say. That's a real G move.
Because I learned that actually my stuff is not my stuff.
Mm.
My stuff
Now,
is
what you mean by that?
my stuff is God's stuff.
Oh,
To be used by him however way he chooses.
that's it.
If you hearing me saying that I'm divorced and that makes you look at me like, oh, that's fine, because somebody over here is divorced as well or going through, and they now understand that I am not divorced. I just went through a divorce, and there's a difference between the two.
Mm.
And then I had to learn how to trust God with my girls. And I prayed and said, okay, God, while you have me helping this one, send somebody to help mine. Mm-hmm. Mm. It really is one big circle, the circle of life. It really is one big circle.
Yeah.
It really and truly is. And like you say, it's the big G move.
It's the G move.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is not for the faint of heart. But it's easy to walk. I mean, to talk the spiritual talk, but to really walk it, you got to be a gangster. I'm telling you, you got to be a gangster for God.
You do. And that's exactly it right there. You got to be like, it's me and Jesus. And that's right. And that's how you got to do it.
And mean it. You people can say it all day, get your little Jesus piece, have it big enough to be on the hood of a Mercedes Benz. But if you ain't got the follow-up, the action, the heart posture,
it'll eat you up.
It'll tear you down.
Yes. And you're right.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's the church folk, not the Christians, because real Christians understand.
Mm-hmm.
It is the church folk that will beat you down with it.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And it's like, we got to get to the point where, because I put on here, because I know we're talking ultimately about self-talk, right? Yes. And some of the stuff we commonly say about ourselves that is just negative. Like, we're not good enough, we're not cute enough, we're unworthy, we're sinners, we're failures, we're not smart enough. I'm the wrong color. I'm from the wrong family. I'm lonely. I'm alone. I'm not special.
Yeah, don't forget
right.
Don't forget I'm fat or I'm overweight and I'm just,
not cute enough. I just put, in that fat, overweight, all of that, my shirt too little, all of that stuff, all of it. We will say it to ourselves. Yes. But when you talking about the ritual versus the relationship, like you said, go ahead and actually seek God and ask him and seek his word about what he says about you. We will find out what he thinks about us, that we're loved, that we're worthy and valuable, that we are chosen. Yes. That we're a child of the Most High God.
Of the Most High God.
Oh my God. When I think about, and one thing I found out as I've been, growing in my relationship is how it's so easy to say this stuff, but to believe it, we don't really believe it. We don't really let it sit in that the Most High God, who made the entire universe, calls us his child. We don't own that. We don't move in it. We don't act like it. And it's hard to, a lot of times it's hard to believe. And that's why it's so important for us to tell ourselves every day, we're his child. We're forgiven. We're adopted. Right. We are whole.
Right. I am a whole person.
Yeah. A lot of time, especially and specifically in this situation, right? You didn't think that, you thought you probably was more powerful as a unit that you could ever be as a single based off of your own self-talk.
Right.
Then you find out that and then if you take it to your word, Colossians 2:10 tells us, so you are complete through your union with Christ.
With Christ, yes.
But we don't go and to find that out. We will believe what somebody else say. Because somebody else say spinster, or somebody else say, you ain't married yet? Right. Oh, you ain't got no kids yet. Or maybe that's just my life. I'm sorry, it got personal for a minute. I didn't mean it got a little personal for a minute there, it's hard to go from when you got to make those transition from don't bring no kids in here to why you ain't got no kids yet. That's a hard, that's a hard thing. Right. But that's just me. But that's those are the kind of things that happen that mess our thoughts up about ourselves, and we believe it.
Yes,
it must be something wrong with me. I must not be worthy. I must have done something unforgivable.
Right.
But
Right.
God is saying, no, even me, even you, even
Right.
whoever you are, people sleeping on the street, people who
Yes.
have murdered, people who have lied, people who have cheated, you are
Yes.
still fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes.
And you are not too far to be gone. So don't let nobody tell you different.
That part right there.
That part right there.
Yeah.
Because when you think about what it does to you, right? I looked on here and I was looking at some of the consequences of negative self-talk, right? How it limits your thinking,
You stay
right?
in you stay in abusive relationships too long.
And
Yes.
then how it can affect all your relationships, either ones
Yes.
with your family, your work relationships, because constant self-criticism makes you seem needy and insecure. You can be very insecure, and
Yes.
insecurity starts inside.
Yes. And it'll keep you from walking in what God has called you to.
Exactly.
You walk,
Exactly.
you walk in disobedience because of all of this negative self-talk.
Yes, yes. And then it's like, it's just and I feel like it's so progressive, right? Because it leads to depression.
Yes.
All negative self-talk leads to depression. And
Yes.
then this was one that I thought was interesting. Consequences of negative self-talk is
Yes.
perfectionism. And now that right there is unattainable, right? So really
Right.
and when you believe that great isn't good as perfect and that perfection is actually attainable, it's not. So while you're trying to be perfect out there, trying to fool somebody into thinking that you believe that you, or you can work yourself to be better than God has already made you, you're wrong. You
Right.
can't get no better than you are right now.
Okay.
Because he's not going to love you one bit more for for what you think or perceive is perfect. It don't work like that.
And as I began to accept my flaws
Mm-hmm.
and my shortcomings and my issues, that's when I was able to really give it to God. I said, God, what? Like Moses, when he said, I stutter, I can't talk. What God said, I didn't ask you all that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So as you begin to, because God is not, he's so loving and so kind. He's not going to ask you to do anything that he won't equip you to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Here again, like I said, beginning to understand me and believe in what God was reading, I began to accept, okay, well, maybe God can use me. Maybe God can use me. Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is maybe. For those people that just feel like, well, it sounds good. All it start with is a maybe. Just try it a little bit. Just some baby steps. And then next thing you know, it's just like, oh, well, this is okay. Well, and the next thing you know, you just build your confidence. Yes. And that's why, when back in the day, like you said, the mothers in the church used to say, just trying.
Yes. Yes.
Just trying. We did a show on tithing.
Yes,
and I was just trying to get people to try it, because that's how I started.
Yes.
When I started, it is, you work in the church. Yes. So you know how you got to sign that little contract where they say, are you giving the 10%? I say, hold on, Minister Tracy. What's about to happen if y'all find out I'm a $20 giver instead of a 10% giver? Because I don't want to get no embarrassment moments up in here. What's going to happen? Right. And so, I found out that it wasn't one of those situations, but after a while, I still ended up trying it. And that was the best thing I could have done. And, when I tell people who got money problems, the best thing they can do is start tithing, they look at me like I'm out of my mind. I'm like, that's the best. I'm telling you, that's what I did. Yeah. I have not had no windfalls, no lottery, no nothing. But my financial situation took a full 180. See? And I don't make no bunch of money. What you say? And yeah. I ain't worked now, even now. I ain't worked at almost 8 months. See? Other than this here. And this don't pay.
And still got a roof over your head.
I'm still good. Yeah. I can still get cheese on anything I want. Do you understand? But I pay them tithes. Yes, I do. Yes. But it's just that that's that trust. And we try to talk ourselves out of what we can't afford to do, but we need to talk ourselves at what we can't afford not to do.
Right. And that's it right there.
That is it. Right.
Yes.
And so now as you moving into, you got past, you know, you learn how to see yourself as God see you, which is
Yes.
ultimately should be everybody's goal. When you get to
Yes.
that point where you can see yourself the way God see you,
Yeah.
you in the game.
When you get to the point to where you can believe that God accepts you as you are.
That's it.
That's the thing right there. When you can believe that God sees me, he knows all about me. When you can really believe he knows you, he knows all about you, and he still accepts you, it goes back to when we were talking about a few minutes ago about church folk judging you and not, putting you on that list versus that person that just brings you in, loves on you, makes you a part of, they accept you as you are. It's a big difference. So when you believe that God really sees you and he knows all about you and he still chooses you, that's the game changer right there. That's the game changer right there.
Yes.
That's the game changer right there.
And it's going to be an internal shift.
Yes.
And that's why this conversation was so important, because it's so easy we can get up and say, we talking about identity right now, but it could be so much to even the trajectory of your day. If you get up thinking your day gonna be bad and saying it out loud and all of that, guess what? You about to have a bad day.
About to have a bad day.
If you can, and then we say things, and I used to catch, and I really tried to watch what come out of my mouth. I had got to the point where I thought that evil thoughts was supposed to not happen no more. I was waiting for that to happen. But I realized you can't really stop that, but you can stop it from coming out. Just you got to watch the things that you say to yourself. You know what I'm saying? The stuff that come out. The things that come out that say, it could be anything from I'm always late, or nothing never go right. Oh, here come this again. It's always something. Those kind of things keep always something going in.
Yes.
When you look in the mirror, like I've had times in the mirror where I looked and I didn't see someone beautiful. I'm glad that that's changed, but I didn't change a whole lot. I'm really probably the same size as high school, because I always, but and people always tell me how I look just the same. I'm one of those people, like, I ain't never changed. My face ain't changed. My telephone number ain't changed. I had the same telephone number since cell phones came out. I ain't had no bunch of changing. But what changed was my mindset.
Yes. Yes.
I look and I say, girl, you are beautiful. And I would tell myself. And I don't wait for nobody else to tell me.
Right. Like, oh, you're looking kind of cute today.
Yes, you got to tell yourself. Encourage yourself.
Yes.
And know that it's always going to be a hater, but that's okay.
Always.
It's always going to be somebody trying to tear you down, but that's okay.
Yes.
It don't matter what they say. It don't matter what God says.
And that's it right there. Yes. That's it right there.
And that is, that just when you got to that point, how was it empowering for you?
It was very empowering. It was very liberating. It really and truly was. And you're right. Everything just looked different from that point. Everything looked different. What people said to me felt different. Yes.
So give me an example of that.
Okay, so what that would look like is something like, because I'm often told about my mouth. So whereas I used to wouldn't say anything, like I say, just take whatever. It helped me to be able to speak up and say, no, I don't agree with that. No, it's not what I want to do. Here's where I am. Here's what's going on. Here's what I need. Now, if you can work with that, fine. If not, I'm okay. And which changed for a couple of relationships in my life to people I was dealing with, because now it's like, it's almost like, oh, you got the nerve enough to speak up for yourself? I do.
When you changed, did you see your circle change?
It did. It changed quickly. It changed.
Yeah. Because I noticed a lot of times we definitely have to check our circle around a lot of different scenarios, because your circle can be bringing you down, and you might be fooling yourself because you think just because they cool don't mean they good for you.
And it's amazing how the circle got smaller for a while, but some of the very ones who left the circle eventually tried to come back to the circle because they benefited from watching the circle from a distance. Now they want to be back up close. You can still benefit from the better self-talk, but you're still going to benefit from a distance. You're still going to benefit from a distance. Yeah. I'm still going to encourage you. I'm still going to have boundaries and standards for my life.
Yes.
But I can help you with yours too, but it'll just be from a distance.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And so when you think about ways to, if you could give just a few tips for somebody who's not sure how to shift their self-talk, you know, I know it'll be people from all walks of life that it may be at all different points of where they are mentally, you know, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that will see this. So if you could just give like a general few tips on how to get on the road of improving your self-talk, what would you give? Like a top 3.
Like the top 3 would be the magic of a pen and a piece of paper. Yes. I always encourage people to journal. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. If you want to get one of those 70 sheet notebooks that you can get for 50 cents. And I tell them, when you start out, don't worry about punctuation, don't worry about spelling, just write. Just write. Especially for people who are hesitant to say it to somebody else, just write it. Right. Just begin to write. And the thing I would say to them, and I always tell people, take a piece of paper and split it down the middle. Put on there your attributes on one side and your flaws on the other. The things that you feel like you're good at or that look good about you, and the things that you're not so proud of. And now the things that are your attributes, the good things about you, how can you enhance them and use them to help somebody else? The things that you consider a flaw, how can you change that? How can you fix that? Do you want to fix it? Do you want to change it? Same thing with each of those. And so, and from there, they go on. And I'm always encouraging people to, you definitely, if you want to get to know God and to know God, how God feels about you, you gotta pray. And there are no fancy words. It's something as simple as, God help me, God show me. Reading, and of course, we always refer people back to 139th Psalm because it talks about how fearfully and wonderfully made, how God took his time to put us together. But one of the things that made the most impact for me in that particular scripture was when David said, no matter where I go, God, you're right there with me. David said, if I make my bed in hell, you're right there with me. Which meant that when I was going through, God was still right there. David said, if I'm in the darkest place, it's lit up, God, because you're there with me. So God, you're right there with me. And I challenge people all the time to get a favorite song and to get a favorite scripture. So that regardless of what happens in your life, you can revert back to that. Mine, Psalm 46:1 is one of mine. God is a very present help in the time of trouble. Very present. So to get a favorite song, something that will take your mind, that will cause you to center your mind on God. And for those people who aren't saved or who don't profess God, you still need a favorite quote or a favorite song. And one of my favorite quotes is by one of my ex-boyfriends, Clint Eastwood.
That what?
One of my favorite quotes is by one of my ex-boyfriends.
I thought you said song. I'm like, wait, let me find out Clint was in the studio.
One of my favorite quotes, and it's a quote I try to live by. A man has got to know his limitations. You need to know your limitations.
True that.
And so here again, a famous quote or a song, something to be able to center you, bring you back to the center, bring you back to that place to where you can stop and think. But I'm telling you, the power of a pen and a piece of paper or a pencil and a piece of paper will take you far. Because even if you're trying to date or anything like that, put on that paper what you have to offer and what you're not willing to tolerate. What you're looking for, here again, and what you're willing to offer.
Yeah, I love it. The only other thing I would add to that is when those bad thoughts come up, combat them with something positive.
With something positive. And see, putting those flaws and those attributes down and writing about yourself will help you do that.
Yes.
Will help you do that.
Yes.
Because you will begin to see you.
Yes.
And it will teach you how to love on you. Like, I may not be good at cleaning, but I can cook a mean meal.
Okay.
So you see what I'm saying? I may not be able to do that, but I can do this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I think that is so powerful right there. Because we get so strong, we get so fixated on what we can't do or what we don't do well or what we don't have.
Yeah.
And take all of the attention off of what we do have.
Yes.
And so it all boils down to being grateful.
And that's it right there. That's it right there. And that is it right there. Yes. Being grateful. Like I said, and then being honest enough to say, I can't do that for you, but I can do this. And being okay with having to say no. No, I can't do that.
And saying no is a skill. You
Girl,
got to
no.
get in it. You got to.
Girl, no is a complete sentence.
It is. It is so. It is so. It is so much just like it says so. But it's so liberating when you get to the point where you got good at it. It took me a minute to get good at it, but I am great. I'm a no ninja. I'm telling you. You be like, dang, then when she get nunchuck, she said no so hard. Like, yeah. No. But thank you. I'm gonna say yes. I hope it go well. I think y'all gonna do. Y'all are.
She say no, but I hope that go well for you.
I'm telling you. I was like, oh, okay. Well, this is good because when you find out, because it ain't just because you're saying no, don't mean that you're malicious.
Right.
People, I mean, and so and that's when my self-talk got on point when I knew how to be able to say, girl, you ain't hurt nobody feeling. You was just being honest.
No.
Right. Self-talk. No ninja.
Right. She said, I'm the no ninja.
I'm the no ninja.
And you're right. You have to be able to say to yourself, no, that wasn't mean. That wasn't harsh. That was true.
Yeah.
That was my truth. No, I can't do that right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's up. Well, Gale, thank you so much for coming on today. See, are you glad that you came and did it?
I'm glad. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Oh, but I do have one more question before I let you go. Right. One of my favorite movies is The Help, right? And they laugh at that little affirmation that Adeline was giving to the little white girl she was babysitting, talking about you was kind, you was smart, you was important. But I think that is so important to do. I didn't really grow up with being affirmed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Do you feel like you was affirmed? And if so, how did that change how you affirm your babies?
I was not affirmed.
Mm-hmm.
My mom did not tell us she loved us. Her mentality was, if I do for you, that shows you I love you. Mm. But no, I wasn't affirmed.
It was one of those, you ate, didn't you? Remember that?
Right there. You hit that light. So, I did, because I was not affirmed and I didn't know how to affirm. I didn't affirm my girls, my oldest two, when they were small. Didn't begin to affirm them until they hit high school. Of course, they're having their issues now. And I'm realizing now that it's a self-esteem, self-issue thing for them. Mm-hmm. So I'm making sure that their hair's not only done, you're not only looking good, but you're smart. Mm-hmm. My thing was they couldn't bring C's in the house. B was barely. Yeah. And because you don't have a CD brain, you have an A brain. Mm-hmm. So I expect you to bring A work into the house. Mm-hmm. Told them that they were, how beautiful they were and these types of things. And of course, as they've gotten older, it has become easier because I learned it. Mm-hmm. I learned how to affirm me. Mm-hmm. So I can say to my girls, I'm proud of you for this. I'm proud of you for that. I like the way you do this. Oh, you did your thing. These types. And sometimes it's the little things that matter the most. Mm-hmm. So no, even though I wasn't affirmed and I didn't know how to affirm, once I learned how to affirm, I affirmed.
I think that makes a huge difference in, how that's like the foundation of our self-talk.
Yes.
And that if nothing else comes out of this, I hope people that are parents, people who are cousins, people who are siblings, people who are working with children or around children for neighborhood children, that's something that we have to be really, really careful about the words and what we speak over these kids, because you just never know what negative term, even if you don't mean it to ruin their life at the point. Right. Just be careful what you speaking over these kids. Cause I know I used to be bad at calling my little cousins goofy and stuff like that. And that's just something that I've learned not to do because I don't want to speak that over them. You know what I'm saying? And I'm very mindful of that. So if nothing else, make sure when you talking to these kids, you speak life into these kids so they learn how to speak life into themselves. And I think that would be just amazing as far as what it could do to our community, our society, our country, and our world.
Yes.
If we start doing that for these kids, instead of looking at them and seeing the worst in them and speaking the worst, speak the best, speak life over them.
Yes. And not just the kids, with people you meet on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
If you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything. I try to, wherever I go, I make sure, especially when I'm dealing with women, I make sure I compliment her on something.
Oh yeah.
I'm in her presence. If it's her earrings, her hair, whatever it is, I compliment her on something.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Let's affirm each other, everybody.
Yes.
And let's make this, let's walk this walk together. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Gale, thank you so much. I had a great conversation. I hope you feel as blessed from this experience as I do. And I hope that somebody else is blessed through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope somebody else understands just how much God loves them.
Absolutely. And well, I'm going to have you back.
They were created on purpose and with specifics.
Say that one more time.
They were created on purpose and with specifics.
And you heard it right here on TCW. If you ain't heard it nowhere else, you are here to be everything God called you to be and nothing less.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gale.
You're welcome, dear.
Thank you so much, Minister Gale, for coming and sharing your powerful story and reminding us how important the things that we say to ourselves are reminiscent of the things that God says about us and not those of the enemy. Thank you for that powerful testimony. Thank you for joining the conversation. And thank you for being brave enough to be able to not only learn from your mistakes, but teach from them. If this conversation spoke to you, please like it, please share it, and definitely please subscribe to my channel. Remember, you can still catch us on iHeart Radio as well as Apple Podcasts if you can't watch but only want to listen. On this walk with God, I know loving God can be easy. Trusting God can be hard. But I believe we can all get there one step at a time on this Christian walk. I'll see you next time.
Walk with me, talk with me. What you know about God, will he ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me, hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen homie, can you walk with me, talk with me? What you know about God, will he ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me, hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen homie, can you walk? Can you walk? Let's walk.